The automobile is one of the most important inventions that revolutionized the modern world. In America, the rich history of car culture runs deep as technology continues to shape the future of the industry. Jason Stein,
former publisher of Automotive News,
is here to share the stories of people passionate about cars, from industry leaders and innovators to car-obsessed celebrities. Buckle up as Jason takes you inside the boardroom, onto the track, and around the bend on Cars and Culture on SiriusXM Business Radio.
Welcome to the 131st episode of Cars and Culture on SiriusXM. It's good to have you back listening again. I'm your host, Jason Stein. That revving in the distance is the sound of an automotive startup, one that is taking shape in a form that's as unique as the cars that they produce. It might not get the headlines of a Rivian, a Tesla, Lucid, or another EV car company, but that's probably because it's not an EV startup, and it's also not a new brand. That revving is coming from a company called Revology Cars, the creation of Tom Scarpello, a former Ford executive who's charging nearly $300,000 for the transformation and the reimagination of a certain vintage Ford Mustang. Not just any vintage, mid-1960s Mustangs. And not just any makeover. Revology is all about the reimagination of a brand, resto mods, as they're called, which capture imagination as well as pocketbooks. These are cars that we remember for our past and generally our memories, and about how good they were, which oftentimes far exceeded our memories and the original capabilities of the car. But no more. Revology puts modern-day tech in old-school shells, bringing high-quality, comfortable, well-performing vehicles to our garages. They build Mustangs with updated technology and performance. They aren't cheap. They start near $250,000, but they are selling out. Ford Motor Company Chairman Bill Ford has one, as does his wife, and so does comedian Kevin Hart, to name just a few. With a production facility nowhere near Detroit, instead, near Orlando, Florida, they have more demand than supply. And they're as unique and compelling as the originals, only with better technology and better platforms, and a much better experience. As Tom puts it, it's all about passion in these cars. And he's helping the previous generation of car lovers, as well as making a few fans of the new generation, find that perfect balance between what once was and what could be. This is the story of Revology and a man's pursuit to build the perfect 1960s Mustangs. A perfect gift for the holidays, here on Cars and Culture.
Hello, I'm Tom Scarpello, and this is Cars and Culture with Jason Stein.
That revving sound that you hear in the distance is Tom on his way to the show. Because there are a lot of revs around Revology. Tom, welcome to the program. It's a pleasure to have you on Cars and Culture. You form car culture, so thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Tom, let's start off. Why Revology? I mean, we've had folks from Singer on here. We've had a couple of your customers actually on here. We've had Bill Ford and Jim Farley. But in your mind, why Revology?
Yeah, well, the cars from this era, the 1960s, are really special for a lot of reasons. One of which, though, is from a design aspect, because this was really before safety standards fundamentally changed car design. And it was really that last era where you saw the true artistic expression of the designers manifest themselves in the vehicle's designs. I think that's a big part of the appeal of cars from the 1960s and earlier. It was also a time of unbridled creativity in music and fashion, so the whole era is kind of magical. But the issue is that technologically, cars have advanced significantly, particularly in the area of vehicle dynamics, which is how a vehicle responds to driver inputs, propulsion system outputs, and the conditions, the ambient conditions, road conditions, and so forth. And they're really lacking. People who have become accustomed to modern vehicle dynamics have a really hard time going back to a 60s level technology. And, that's really what drove the resto mod trend, which I would say probably really started moving 15 years ago or so. I had been tinkering with modern technology and vintage platforms in the early 90s, and back then it was considered sacrilegious. You know, you're cutting up this classic car and destroying its value, because back then the value was all in the originality. Um, but you know, cars are to drive. That's the whole purpose of a car. And if you can't enjoy driving it, I mean that takes a big aspect of the entertainment and the joy, you know, the enjoyment out of it. So really, that was the whole reason for starting this company. I saw a trend happening in the marketplace where people were valuing modern technology features in classic cars, and I didn't really think anyone was doing it as well as it could be done. And that's the kind of the reason that I started Revology Cars.
You were also a little restless, right? I mean, let's be honest. You admitted that you wanted to do something for you. And what you did was you did your own 66 Mustang with a new motor and some comfort items. Mm-hmm. And the rest was kind of history, maximizing European vehicle dynamics, right? And you have a fundamental platform with disc brakes, rack and pinion steering, AC. And I know some say, in fact, you have said resto mods are just a collection of parts, not necessarily an engineered platform. Give us a little bit more on that.
Yeah. Well, that statement, I guess that comes from helicopters, right? Helicopters are a group of parts flying in loose formation, right? You could say the same thing about most resto mods. You know, they're not really designed as a system. So I guess maybe just back up a second for the listeners that aren't familiar with Revology Cars. So we build re-engineered versions of 1960s Mustang and Shelby GT models. We do 9 different models in our factory in Orlando, Florida. We've been at this for almost 10 years. We have 120 employees, and we've delivered over 190 cars to clients in 18 countries. Our Mustangs are licensed by Ford Motor Company, and our Shelby GTs are licensed by Shelby American. We build the cars one of 2 ways, either from a donor car, in which case technically it would be classified as a resto mod, or we have the capability to build a car as a new replica, in which case it's sold as a rolling chassis without a powertrain sold separately, and it's registered as a replica, the way that like a Shelby Cobra replica would be registered. In that case, it gets a replica title. I don't like the word replica because replica technically means exact copy. We like the term reproduction. Reproduction is, it's the process by which an organism produces a offspring that has similar characteristics. Our cars have the DNA of the original 1960s Mustangs, but they're significantly evolved. So they're effectively, we look at them as descendants of the 60s Mustang. Same character and style, but thoroughly modern driving dynamics and functionality.
But your history, and if we could walk the listener through that a little bit,
yeah,
was an automotive one. Where did that car passion come from? And I guess I would say, having spent a number of years at different car companies, why Mustangs?
Oh, well, so first of all, where did it come from? I don't know. I was born with it. When I was 5 years old, I wanted to be a race car driver. It just, my entire life. I mean, it was just cars, cars, cars. It was cars and music. Those were the 2 front runners in my life. And I thought I was a pretty good guitar player, but in the end, I didn't have the passion for music that I had for cars. And so I decided to follow my automotive passion. And, you know, why Mustang? Well, primarily because Mustang is the quintessential classic car. It's the car everybody recognizes. A 65 or 66 Mustang, you could wake someone up at 2 o'clock in the morning and they'd be able to identify it. It's universally recognize. And this idea was always about not just Mustang, but the idea of modernizing a classic car and making it relevant. And I thought, well, if you can't make that happen with Mustang, you can't do it with anything. That's really the reason. And plus, I had been with Ford for 17 years. I had the contacts there, people who knew me enough to say, hey, yeah, this guy Scarpello can probably make a go at it. We'll give him a shot, right? Give him a license and we'll do it. Sometimes you just need a chance, or you just need someone to give you a chance. And that was possible with Ford because I had a history with the company.
You were in engineering, correct?
No, actually, I'm often mistaken for an engineer, but I'm not by training. I studied business. In my undergrad was in production operations management, and my first position at Ford was as a supervisor in the Wayne assembly plant in Wayne, Michigan. And then later I went back to school to get my MBA, studied marketing and finance, and then rejoined Ford in their marketing and sales operations, worked in product planning, worked overseas, worked in the special vehicle team for 6 years, and then was with Jaguar Cars as head of their marketing and product planning for North America.
So let's go back to the idea. How easy was it to convince Ford executives that you should even be doing this?
Well, it actually wasn't that hard. And I think the reason was that, well, first of all, I mean, they know me, or they knew me. But then the other thing is, Ford has, I'd say over the last 10 or 15 years, really started to understand and appreciate its enthusiast base. It wasn't always that way. I mean, remember, this is the company that wanted to replace the Mustang with a front-wheel drive Japanese car. But that probably was a real eye-opener to management that, hey, we've got this enthusiast base out there that are just fanatic and passionate about Ford, and anything that helps to promote our brands, our heritage brands, is good. And so, hey, if Revology can help to promote our heritage brand Mustang, it's good, even if it's a little tiny company just making a handful of cars a year, it's good. So we always had, I feel like, an open door with Ford. They're always welcoming to us and the things that we wanted to do. So it was always pretty encouraging.
Your business story is an interesting one. You raised capital from friends and family and angel investors not quite a decade ago. And that got the engineering completed. And then recently found Knighthead Capital, which, for those who don't know, has invested in Singer Designs and Hertz to underwrite Revology cars. These are finance guys, Tom. But interestingly, and we've had a few here on the program, interestingly, they see automotive consumption as bifurcating, which is kind of a fascinating idea. And they're finance guys recognizing that there are people who want commoditized versions of transportation life and who care about the passion and really the thrill of driving. They want to invest in those who care, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's really true. And I think it's a visionary approach, and you have to be that way. You're in the investment community, right? You need to be planning on where things are going, not where they are right now. And so Knighthead does see the industry bifurcating, where you've got kind of your basic transportation, point A to point B, where you don't even necessarily need to own the vehicle. You might do a short-term rental, or you might be transported by an Uber driver or something like that. But then on the opposite side, you've got people who are buying the vehicle because it means something to them. They're doing it because they enjoy it. It makes them feel good. There's an emotional attachment. And that's where we come in. That's where Singer comes in. I mean, really, these two brands, Revology and Singer, I mean, they're really out at the outer edge of this kind of emerging segment. Supercars, cars have gotten so technologically advanced that they're almost instruments for speed, where they've lost their character. They can just accelerate blindingly fast, and they just do everything so well, but you kind of miss, the emotional aspect of it. And one of the things that I love about a Revology car is that it feels good no matter how fast you're going. It feels special, even just sitting there idling at a stoplight, and you feel the vibration of the V8 engine. And when you pull away, it has plenty of power. Our supercharged cars are faster than a new Challenger Hellcat in terms of acceleration. But that's not the reason. I mean, the numbers aren't really what they're about. They're really more about how they make you feel. And what we're seeing is more and more people are gravitating towards, this type of vehicle because, it just feels good and it's enjoyable to drive and to use.
Is that the element of, I guess, is that what resonates with owners, whether they're resto mods in general or Revology cars in particular? Is that really the piece?
Well, yeah, I mean, you've got obviously the nostalgia is a big part of it, particularly nowadays when, technology is moving so quickly. I mean, anything familiar is kind of nice, it gives you a little sense of security. And the element of nostalgia is a big draw for sure. I think the fact that you can actually enjoy driving one of these cars is a huge aspect of the appeal. The classic 60s cars, they're not fun to drive, and they're not generally reliable. They're not very comfortable, and so consequently people don't really enjoy driving them. And then another reason is, and this is kind of interesting that you might not really think about, but a lot of people who own our cars, I mean, they can have anything they want. I mean, they can own any vehicle they want, and they have. But as one of our clients who has historically owned a lot of Ferraris, has 15 or 20 Ferraris in an airplane hangar in South Florida, told me, he says, I drive one of my Ferraris. I'm just another asshole in a Ferrari. I drive my 66 Shelby GT350, my Revology, and everyone is giving me the thumbs up. They're waving, I stop for fuel and everyone wants to talk to me. It's like, Mustang is such a friendly car. It just brings out this kind of, I don't know, this emotion in people, and it just feels good. It's nice, and you get a nice reception wherever you go, and that's another aspect of the experience that's unique.
Yeah, it's true. Mustang owners are never quite categorized as being the Ferrari type of owners, are they?
No, they're not. But it's America,
It is.
Mustang owners are America, and Mustang's America. I mean, it really, really is.
Jay Leno, a couple of years ago on this program, explained why he never wanted to own a Ferrari, and I'm convinced that that's one element of this.
Yeah.
So what's the market like in general now that you've been in it for a little while to think about other brands? And I'll go back to your Nissan days. I mean, could Nissan not do the same thing?
Well, the challenge for an OEM is that, you obviously need to meet current model safety standards and emission standards. Emissions is maybe not that difficult to do for an OEM. Safety is, because the safety requirements that are currently that OEMs have to meet now. Well, I mean, cars that were designed 60 years ago, they can't. It's impossible to retain that original shape and meet current safety standards. So, that's why you see a lot of heritage cars that look similar to, but not exactly like. The current Mustang obviously has a lot of design elements from the early Mustang. Everyone knows many automakers have kind of leveraged their heritage car designs in their current automobiles, but clearly they have to look different to meet safety standards. So it is a bit of a niche that, companies like us and like Singer are able to, you know, to go after for that reason.
And they're big money projects here. I mean, Rob Dickinson told us in the program, obviously the price tag around some of the vehicles that Singer's doing. What does a Revology car cost? I know the average price, but I want you to say it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, our average transaction price is right around $275,000. So our entry is just under 250. Our supercharged cars, the 68 Cobra Jet, 67 Shelby GT500, and 68 Shelby GT500 KR go for the average around 325. So yeah, they're expensive. That maybe 4 times the cost of the new Mustang GT. It's not 10 times the cost, but it is a hand-built vehicle. It's built effectively from prototype parts. I mean, low volume tool parts that require a lot more hand fitting than production level parts. So there's an awful lot of labor that goes into building the body and making sure the surfaces are ready for paint. That's even before you paint, tremendous amount of work. The majority of the work actually happens there. So it's not an easy business equation. And one of the reasons that it works for us is that it's all we do. If we were we were like a hot rod shop trying to build all these different cars that our customers might want. I mean, I can't imagine how that would be. It'd be impossible. I mean, we build every car on the same platform. We call it the M58 platform. It is derived from the platform that Ford used from 1964 and a half to 1970. So it is the same wheelbase, the same length, same width, but it's the same layout, obviously front engine, rear wheel drive, but everything else is different. So we use the front suspension's double wishbone, the rear is a 3-link with a torque arm in the panhard rod for lateral stability, 4-wheel disc brakes, rack and pinion steering. But every car we built has that same platform. So we've been able to develop it, refine it, improve it. I can't imagine how it would be if we're trying to do, different cars all the time. So, it works. It works, but it is a tough business equation.
Well, and I know you're not an engineer, as you said, but you've applied really assembly line discipline to a hot rodding application, haven't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in our factory in Orlando, we have 26 assembly line stations, and then each of those stations is supported by a number of sub-assembly stations. But every car we build goes through the same 26 stations, starting with framing, which is where the unibody is constructed. So we weld the body in-house. We've developed all the fixturing to set all the parts together correctly. And so we have excellent dimensional control. And then the weld integrity is also first rate. We use automated spot welding equipment, something that didn't exist back in the 60s. So we're able to build the bodies consistently, very strong, all new sheet metal. You don't have issues with, rust and crash repairs that might have been done in the 70s to a not a great standard.
Are you still in that 51,000 square foot facility near the Orlando airport?
Yep, we are. We just we moved in, completed the move in April of this year, and it's been great. It's a beautiful location. It's been, it's a great place to work. It's interesting that we've already occupied all the space and already looking for more space. So it's amazing how quickly.
But it's kind of funny, is a former pharmaceutical repackaging facility, which is actually your second real factory, right? The first one was a dark warehouse on the outskirts of town. How in the world does a guy who worked in Detroit for so long pick Orlando as the place to build a vehicle that is a Detroit icon?
Yeah, well, it's not the first place that I would choose if I were looking objectively at where I wanted to start a car company. But I had family reasons to be in Orlando, and I thought it was as good a place as any. It's been good in terms of like attracting and retaining qualified technicians. It's been good. I mean, there are auto enthusiasts everywhere. And as you might expect, a lot of our employees are really passionate about automobiles. A little more of a challenge to find people with background in automotive engineering or automotive supply chain, but we've been able to attract those types of people as well. So it's worked out. It's worked out pretty well.
When you look around at other companies who are doing similar things, and you mentioned we've referenced Singer a couple of times, what is your view on where we are today as a culture? And maybe it just gets down to the fact that these vehicles that are in some cases 60 years old are just way more appealing than anything that's coming out that's brand new.
Mm-hmm.
Is that your view of it?
Well, yeah, it is interesting. And sometimes I wonder, like, I look at all the new cars and like, I can't get excited about any of them. Like, I really, I don't, and it's a shame.
Mustang Mach-E?
I mean, it's a nice car. My brother has one. I mean, there are a lot of nice cars. They're nice and they do everything really well. I mean, they drive well and the performance is great and they're reliable and just everything is great. But I don't know. I can't get excited about them. And I wonder if it's just I've been doing this for too long. I mean, it's almost 10 years. And maybe I've just kind of lost I don't know. But yeah, the cars from this era are so unique and different. They have an appeal that modern cars don't have. I mean, everything, now is so much defined by, regulation that, the creativity, it just is, I don't want to say it's stifled because the regulation has resulted in good things. It's resulted in cars that are very safe. And that's good for mankind and progress is this kind of progress is good and lower emissions and that's all good stuff, but you do lose some of the passion and the character. I mean, character, if you think about what character is flaws. That's what it is. And these cars are flawed, but they had character, and it's just how you look at it. But that is appeal.
What about, I mean, this program is obviously cars and culture. What about the culture of what you're dealing with now? I mean, we need numerous shows to talk about Mustang culture, don't we, Tom?
Yeah, Mustang culture is, it's something else. There's nothing like Mustang culture.
You said it earlier. It's Americana. It's really the definition of a different time in the evolution of the American automobile, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, every enthusiast brand kind of has its devotees and they maybe have their kind of specific characteristics but in the end, I mean, they're all kind of attracted by the same things, right? The cars that are special to them mean something to them, have some significance to them. They identify with them. And that's such a valuable thing for any automaker, to have. I mean, these people, they're your evangelists, right? So very, very important. Yeah.
You have some significant customers. I mentioned two of them earlier. Jim Farley is a Revology fan, and two Ford family members, Edsel and Bill. I think Bill even bought one for his wife, Lisa, correct?
Yep. car 191 shipped out recently. They haven't they've been traveling. They haven't seen it yet, so I haven't heard yet from Lisa. Etzel Ford is the owner of car number 104. Jim Farley keeps threatening to buy a car, but he hasn't done it yet. So I'll keep working on him. And yeah, we have a few celebrities. Kevin Hart is the owner of car 61. He recently showed that car at the LA Auto Show as part of his collection. But most
How did
of our
that? How did that happen?
Well, it was interesting. So we got a call from someone, Yoshi, my wife, who handles marketing and sales for the company, got a call from a gentleman in California asking a lot of questions about the car. And, she'll always Google people when they call, just to see. And it turns out he was Kevin Hart's hairstylist. So she thought, connection, right? Well, it turned out to be Kevin. So we got on a call with him when he was ready to spec out the car. I said, well, what are you thinking? What do you want? He says, just make it badass.
Just make it badass. It should be the mantra for every car company.
Yeah, that was my instruction. Just make it badass. So,
and did you?
Oh yeah, it was great. I spec'd it out how I would build it. So Porsche jet black metallic, red leather interior, red GT stripe. But I put everything on exactly how I would build it myself. Presented it to him. He liked it. Do it. That was it.
Okay, so he made the trip to Orlando, showed up, and said, "It's badass."
No, he didn't actually come here. We shipped the car to him, and then I got a call from him, and he was pretty happy. He said, "Yeah, it's badass." So,
how do you want the world to know, obviously beyond this program, that you're doing what you're doing? Is it word of mouth, or are you doing other marketing efforts to try to make Revology bigger? And by the way, how big can it get?
Yeah, well,
or do you not want it to be that big?
No, we do want it to be big. We really have been capacity constrained up until this year. In the old facility, we actually had two facilities, and we were, building the body in one and shipping it to the other and painting it and shipping it back to the first one for final assembly. And it was really, complex and inefficient. But since we've been in this facility, we've been able to almost double our production capacity, and there's a lot more upside potential as well. So, I think we're at a point now where we can realistically start doing some promotional activity. Just kind of didn't make sense to do it when we were capacity constrained, because we had a year waiting list, and why do you want to just build up a waiting a backlog? It was kind of pointless. But now we are, and we're going to start doing some marketing activity. As far as like how high could it go? Well, as far as donor cars go, I mean, building cars from original donors, it's, as long as there's a supply of original Mustangs out there to build from, and that's a pretty big number of cars. That could go for a long time. We're also, very much interested in developing a car that's compliant with the FAST Act, Low Volume Manufacturer Act, that was passed in 2015, which the regs were published by NHTSA just last year. That would allow us to build up to 325 turnkey cars annually. So that would be, I think, a bit of a different product in some ways. It would be a lot more similar to a modern car, but still, have the heritage design cues and things like that. So there's a lot of possible avenues for growth for this company.
An honest question, one asked by our executive producer, Dutch Mandel, who, of course, was the publisher of Auto Week for a long time. And he asked whether you see the market for Revology cars diminishing as buyers age.
Yeah, I don't really think so. And it's because, we see a lot of younger people who are interested in these cars. I think that, you look at, I understand the logic, right? Because you think of some of the pre-war cars nowadays and the people for whom those cars were relevant, are no longer around, and maybe the values are declining somewhat, and you would expect the same thing might happen to these cars. I don't know when that'll happen. Yes, I guess eventually it will, because each generation sort of has the cars they grew up with, which are the ones that are nostalgic for them, right? The people who grew up with cars in the 90s, I mean, all of these 90s cars are becoming really popular, now that those people get, to a stage of life where they have some disposable income. So I guess there would be a generational thing. Now, how long is that going to go on for? I don't know. Maybe I'd say probably have a good 20, 30 years with this generation of cars. But I mean, we can just easily move on to another generation. We don't have to be stuck in the 60s.
Yep. You could do that 79 Mustang that everybody really coveted.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you look around, the landscape of kind of maybe not so historic vehicles, but certainly vehicles that get a lot of attention, and you see Broncos that are now being restored.
Yeah.
What do you think of all that?
Well, I think people, their passion for vehicles, cars, trucks, SUVs, whatever. I mean, it can manifest itself in a lot of different ways. I mean, I think certainly what we see is that the collector car segment, to a large extent, mirrors the volume segment. So as people in general started to become more interested in pickup trucks and SUVs, you saw greater interest in classic pickup trucks and SUVs, and that sort of followed that same trend, which is not really surprising. Sometimes I wish we had started building Broncos. I think it's a lot more simple vehicle to build. Mustang's quite. You would think it was not that difficult, but a unibody car like Mustang versus a body and frame vehicle like a Bronco, it's difficult. But yeah, I don't know. I think there's just all kinds of cars, trucks, SUVs that are interesting, and there's people who are passionate about them, and you just kind of choose your path and go with it.
Your former crosstown rivals, there's been a lot of talk of Chevy or Dodge expressing an interest in doing similar models. And in fact, now you see the last runoff of these gasoline engine vehicles, the last effort, if you will. Tim Kuniskis, former head of Dodge, has been on this program talking about that. Do you think that they're going to get involved the way that you've been involved, or is somebody going to do what you're doing with Detroit muscle from the other brands?
Yeah, I think so. I think that people have been predicting the demise of the internal combustion engine forever. And, that really, really started to become a really loud message, recently. But I think what we've seen is kind of everyone rushing to the market with EVs, and the market kind of pushing back and saying, hey, whoa, we're not really ready for so many EVs. And I think, there was prediction that there'll never be another V12, and this Ferrari 812 is going to be the last V12, and everybody's got to rush out and buy it. There will still be, because, there's certain kind of emotional aspects to the internal combustion engine that you can't get with an EV. And, people ask me, and well, they used to ask me a lot. A couple of years ago, I would get a call once a week from someone that said, hey, you guys going to do an EV? And And I would say, why? Are you interested in buying one? And then they would say, no, I'm interested in investing in a company that's going to make EVs. Um, but, you know, I mean, I don't get those calls anymore. None of our customers are interested in an EV Mustang. I mean, the big part of the experience is the internal combustion engine, and I think there will always be a place for it. It's not unlike an automatic watch, a mechanical watch that, it doesn't tell time as well as, oh gosh, I mean, an Apple Watch does everything, right? But I still enjoy wearing mechanical watch, automatic, because, just everything that goes into it and the craftsmanship and what it means. And I think, there'll always be demand for ICE vehicles that are, specialty vehicles that pull the emotional heartstrings. And that's where we play. That's where I see us continuing to exist and continuing to evolve. And I think, most automakers, I mean, certainly ones that have heritage vehicles in their portfolio, like GM, like Stellantis. I mean, I don't see why they would ever abandon that segment. I mean, it's such a valuable group of customers that I would say, yes, they would stay in that segment in some way.
A few final things, Tom. If I wanted to place my order for my significant other for the holidays, how long does it take to get one of your vehicles rolling into my driveway?
Right now, it's about 6 months.
Okay.
Order to delivery. Yep. Trying to get that down, but 6 months is about right.
And how detailed is the process of speccing out exactly everything that I want? Can it be as detailed as I want? Can I do the Kevin Hart badass version too?
Yeah. Okay, so the continuum is like Kevin Hart on one end, right? And then, I mean, you can get as detailed as you want. I mean, you order it very much like ordering a new OEM vehicle. You choose from an order guide, your options. There's certain mechanical hardware configurations is the only way we build a car, period. There's a lot of options on color and trim. You can do a lot. We do all the interiors in-house, so you can choose. We had a client wanted us to build his convertible with a Rolls-Royce Mandarin orange leather interior. So we did it. We had another client wanted us to paint his car Bentley Passion Pink. So we did. So a lot of flexibility on color and trim. Mechanically, though, you have to stick to the menu.
Yeah, wonderful. I've got one more thing for you.
Yep.
You mentioned, I mean, if you weren't going to do this, you were going to be a musician. What kind of musician were you going to be? Who did you emulate? I mean, let's talk culture now, music culture.
Oh, it's completely Eddie Van Halen. I mean, here's my mouse pad, right? I mean, not a question. I mean, I've been Eddie Van Halen fan ever since I heard. Guitar players. You know how people say, well, everyone who's alive when JFK was shot can remember where they were when that happened. You hear that, right? Every
Sure.
guitar player can remember where they were the first time they heard Eruption. I was in the basement of my buddy's house in Minnesota, and his big brother had the Van Halen 1 album, and he goes, dude, you got to hear this, and I still remember listening to Eruption and my head exploded. So that was.
Are you a guitar player?
Yes, I am.
Because you got a couple of amps behind you in your office right now.
That's actually a refrigerator. I have the amp over there in the creative room. Yeah, creative room. Yeah, but yeah, it's.
And your own personal Revology product, are you upgrading it, or are you sticking with what you have, or are you going to get another one?
Oh no, I actually don't have one. So I used to have cars and motorcycles, and I used to fly airplanes. So I used to do a lot of things. Then I decided to invest all my money in this fledgling car company. So, I don't now.
Now you know how RJ Scaringe feels.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, you do really have to be committed to what you do. It has to be meaningful way beyond money. It's not about the money. I didn't do this for the money. If I wanted money, I would have done a lot of other things. But I wanted to create something meaningful. I wanted to do something that hadn't been done. And would somebody else have done it had I not done it? Maybe. I don't know, but they probably wouldn't have done it exactly the way that I did. And, what's really rewarding to me is when I talk to a customer that receives his car or her car, or they come and pick it up and they just become emotional and even start crying about how much it means to them and how special it is. And, or the trips that they would take with it, with family, and just, it just makes you feel good. It's like, hey, you've done something to make people's lives better. You brighten up people's lives. And even if you just watch one of these cars drive down the street, it makes you feel good. And so I do feel like we're spreading a little bit of joy in the world, and it's good. It's nice. And that is so much more meaningful than making a bunch of money. Although money's nice, but that's not the primary purpose.
I love it. Thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks again to my guest today, Revology founder Tom Scarpello. And to see my interview with Tom, go to the Cars and Culture YouTube channel. Like and subscribe to see more than 130 interviews and more than 1,000 videos. I'm Jason Stein. We'll see you down the road.